Fala, pessoal do SharpCast, muito bom dia, boa tarde ou boa noite, dependendo aí do horário que você está vendo. Eu e o Divinão estamos aqui para mais um podcast com vocês, já é o nosso 11º. E você já deve ter reparado aqui no nosso layout que tem uma coisinha diferente. Hoje esse episódio está tendo um patrocínio, né? É o nosso novo parceiro, a BetBra. A BetBra que é uma book que ela funciona meio que como um espelho ali da Pinnacle e também uma exchange, né? Que funciona como um espelho da Betfair. Ou seja, você tem acesso a 2 books em uma só plataforma. E lá você vai encontrar uma das melhores odds do mercado, além de contar com uma interface muito amigável e com diversas funcionalidades diferentes, né, Divinão?
É isso aí, a gente já utiliza a BetBra aqui na Bifront há bastante tempo, né? Nas nossas operações próprias, e agora a gente está contando com esse apoio deles para trazer esse podcast aqui para vocês. E a parte que eu particularmente mais gosto de apostar lá é que você tem diversas funcionalidades que você não tem nas books comuns, né? Tipo, ver o gráfico de movimentações das odds, você pode programar para pegar alguma aposta no ao vivo, caso você não esteja online para acompanhar o jogo, alguma coisa assim. Além disso, eles adicionaram recentemente também o planilhamento automático das entradas, e o que mais me chama a atenção neles assim são os métodos de depósito, que além de Pix você tem depósito via cripto também, né? Que hoje em dia é uma coisa muito, muito importante, muito grande aqui que a gente está usando aqui na Bifront também.
Show de bola. Então, se você ficou interessado, quer conhecer a BetBra, quer utilizar ela aí como a sua book, é só você escanear esse QR Code que está aparecendo em algum lugar aqui na tela, ou clicar na descrição aqui embaixo, que você vai ser direcionado direto para lá. Fechou?
Bom, já que a gente já fez nosso merchan aqui, vamos começar com o nosso convidado do dia, Alexander Kane, que hoje ele é CEO da SportTrade, uma fintech do mundo das apostas esportivas, e funciona com uma forma semelhante à Betfair que a gente conhece aqui, uma exchange. Hi Alex, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
It's our pleasure on this. Let's begin with you saying something about your journey starting betting, sports betting. How do you start on this world?
And why?
Yeah. So I went to school in Philadelphia, here in the United States. Philadelphia is about 2 hours from New York, and most of your listeners will know where that is. And I was a business law and finance major, and I really fell in love with, trading on stocks, using an app called Robinhood. And I thought to myself, like, I think the reason a lot of us used Robinhood wasn't exactly because of no commissions. It was because it made stock trading a lot more easy and, tangible and easy to understand. And the goal from there was, I had never really been a sports bettor. I sort of felt like sports betting was becoming more popular. This is just before the repeal of PASPA. And I decided to sort of start my own business. And the business idea was to create a sports betting experience that mimicked Robinhood, that gave players control, that allowed you to buy into and sell out of positions. And that those positions would have a fair liquid value throughout the game or the season or whatever the longevity of your bet was that you just made. And that's how I got started. And then obviously entrepreneurship is like chewing glass, as Elon Musk has said. And I think it took us about 5-6 years to get a platform up and running and regulated, and now we're in 2 states. We plan to launch in a few more states here in 2024. So that's a little bit about the founding story. I wasn't originally from sports betting. I've become a sports bettor and a quite avid one through founding SportTrade. And the thesis and the ethos is to give customers very fair liquid experience and give you control, even as a recreational bettor, to say, I want to get in here. Oh, this touchdown just happened. I want to get out now and I want to take profit. And that was sort of that was the founding ethos for SportTrade.
Good. And do you have any background being a bettor, or you just start creating this exchange, let's put it on this way, or you have this other background?
Not really. Didn't really have a background in betting, but have become a sports bettor through doing this, and now bet quite regularly. But didn't really come from the betting background. And when I had started, like, sports betting wasn't legal in Pennsylvania. In fact, it wasn't legal until I think the autumn of 2019.
Yes. Why you choose to invest in an exchange model instead of a traditional sportsbook model like the other books we used to see all around the world?
I think for a couple reasons. One is differentiation. I think the U.S. market is so competitive, and I think the sports book, sort of from a UI perspective model, it's like, look at Bet365, right? That's a brand, globally extremely popular. You look at their performance here in the first few years in the U.S., and they've taken a traditional sportsbook model, which is you have to spend an absolute crap ton of money, and it's going to take years to show results, because if you're making $1 million of gross gaming revenue a given month in a given state, you're probably spending $1 to $2 million in promos, which is making your net gaming revenue negative. And so I think from a differentiation perspective, like, we don't have the budget, we don't really have this sort of, it's not our business model to go after the traditional sportsbook model. And then I think point two is, to be a traditional sportsbook, I mean, I don't see too much of a difference, between in technically a traditional sportsbook and an exchange. I mean, we would never be able to make our own markets and do the risk, and so we would always be contracting a third party to do that. And in an exchange model, we get to contract multiple third parties, and they are licensed, and they assume the risk of all the bets that happen on the platform, and we simply take a commission. I think that model for us as a startup is one that's much less capital intensive. And if you think about it, it's better for the customer, right? So if one market maker is making a certain market and another market maker makes any slightly different of a market, then you could take the bid of one and the offer of other, and you have, like, synthetically a tighter bid offer spread. And that's good for customers. And that's, like, sort of our mission. Like, we want to drive down the cost of a sports bet to as low as possible. And I think the way to do that, like, an exchange enables you to do that. And yeah, even for people that may be recreational, it's like, why would you give them a better price? It's kind of like the way we feel like it's the right thing to do. Like, you shouldn't have to be an expert in sports betting to get a great price. I think an analogy someone made before is, like, you shouldn't have to be an expert in automotives and cars to be able to drive a safe, efficient car. Like, how many people that drive Toyotas are car experts? None. It's just like the market's so efficient and competitive that Toyota had to build an amazing product in order for a customer to use it. Like, I think sports betting hopefully will trend in a similar direction.
I guess the biggest difference for us, for my think, I guess, it's to create a sports book, you need to assume all the winners, So you need to have a lot of more capital to assume this kind of thing, and you need to spend a lot of money, as you said too, to be on the mouth of the people, So everybody, as you mentioned, the 365, everyone knows it, and it don't needs a marketing nowadays. But in the start, they needed a lot to spend.
Yep.
And in an exchange, you have the money there that the customer one puts on market, and the customers two ask it to take it, and they match. It's kind of, I don't want to know, I don't want to say it's easier to do it, but I guess you need less capital,
Yep. And I think it's worth mentioning, we have now multiple market makers, and they are invested in the business. So people come ask me all the time, like, do you accept winners? And like, asking someone that offers exchange wagering like we do, if we accept winners, is sort of like a pointless question. Like, of course we would, right? The important question actually is, do the market makers accept the winners? Because an exchange sits there and collects commission. So it doesn't really care if there are winners. The important question to ask is, do market makers accept all players? And I think that's a real differentiator between SportTrade and a lot of other platforms, is that the market makers are on the same mission we are. They're investors in the business. And they sort of recognize that they have to give like so much better of a product that is currently out there to get customers to switch over. And they also understand the first, X% of your audience over time is always going to be sharp players. And so the onus is on us as SportTrade to find a way to leverage the fact that sharp players are using SportTrade more and more as a way to bring more recreational players into the platform. Because over time, any betting platform, an exchange, an operator that offers exchange wagering, or an operator that doesn't offer exchange wagering, you need recreational customers in order to be profitable. And so yeah, our market makers understand and accept winners as part of like our journey to ultimately get to a place where, the sharp market makes up a smaller and smaller percentage of our overall customer base. But for now, it's, relatively sharp heavy.
And could you explain a little bit how the SportTrade transform one of the weakness point of an exchange, the liquidity, in one of the strongest points of your business?
Yep. So what is your all preferred odds format? Is it decimal odds?
Decimal odds, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. So a traditional sort of bet in Brazil, I would imagine, is like 1.91, 1.91 on either side. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Right. So in the US parlance, that's -110, -110. In the parlance that I actually prefer, which is the inverse of decimal odds, it's called implied probability. So if you took 1 divided by 1.91, you would get somewhere in the range of like 52.4. So in our parlance, like the market is 47.6 at 52.4, right? If you were to look at any stock exchange in the world, the Brazilian stock market works the exact same way. There's a bid and there's an ask. And the bid is, where is the market willing to buy? And there's an ask, where is the market willing to sell? And the spread between those two things is the bid-ask spread. And the wider the bid-ask spread, the more it costs you to place a trade. If I were to buy Team A at 52.4% into a spread that is 47.6 bid offered at 52.4, I take the midpoint of those two, I get 50. Okay, so going back to buying one at 52.4, I'm buying something at 52.4 that's worth 50. So I'm overpaying by $2.4 over 50, roughly 4.8%, right? So the question about liquidity is like, the realization that we have is like, again, all of the early customers that come to SportTrade are going to be using OddsJam, Dark Horse, Unabated, Spank Odds. There's, Crazy Ninja Odds, Prop Professor, Double Down, Odds Pulse. I mean, there's a ton of these odds screens. And when you look at all the odds screens, you look at apps that are in New Jersey or Colorado, you kind of can create a synthetic BBO, a synthetic best bid or offer. And the market makers, as investors in the business, know that volume is the first step to growth, regardless of who it's from. And so what they recognize is, like, if they're not offering the best offer or the best bid, they're not going to get filled. And not just the best offer or best bid on SportTrade, but the best one in New Jersey. So if there's a bet offered at 1.94 on one side and 1.96 on the other side, synthetically across the 25 venues in New Jersey, or in Colorado there's 15, the market maker's not going to get filled. And they also have to take into account our commission. So what they have to end up offering is like 1.99 and 1.99, which becomes like 1.96 or 1.97, 1.97 after our 2% commission, in order to get fills. So that's like sort of our market makers are very well funded. They are institutional style market makers. They are plugged into our system. the same way a market maker plugs into the NASDAQ stock exchange. Our platform, from a matching perspective, is quite literally the NASDAQ matching engine. And they are streaming quotes to that matching engine from things called order entry ports. And those order entry ports can be algorithmically sort of controlled, i.e. 5% of their trading is algorithmic, and another 5% is entering manual quotes. Yeah, like the whole ethos is they sort of understand that if the market that they're making isn't like 1.98, 1.98 or better, they're probably not going to get filled. And so that's how we've turned like the weak, like I think a lot of people think about operators that offer exchange wagering and think that they're actually betting against other people. And the fact is you're not, right? Like if you go onto the Brazilian stock market right now and you go buy a share of the most popular stock, like you're not buying the stock from another like mom and pop investor halfway across the country, right? You're buying it from like Jump or Citadel. They're sitting there and they're at a penny-wide spread, and they're selling it to you, and then they're buying it from someone else like 10 seconds later. And they're providing that synthetic liquidity to match you together synthetically, you a natural buyer and someone else a natural seller. Sports betting sort of exchanges are the same way. 99.9% of the orders that are placed in our system are placed by the licensed market maker. It doesn't mean that you can't come in and put in, oh, this market's 1.98 both sides. I want to be, I want to back at 2.0. And there it is. There's a 2.0 bid in the market, and someone else can take that out. That absolutely can happen. But I think it may be a myth out there, like, oh, when I see an exchange, it's just all other people putting in these orders. And the reality is, like any exchange, a stock exchange or a sports betting exchange, 99% of the liquidity that you see there is algorithmically placed there by algorithmic market makers. So that's our biggest advantage. We have very, very tight and liquid markets. And it's not just pregame, but where we really shine is in play. So there's no delay whatsoever. If you want to bet $2,000 down at 2.2 on something, it goes through immediately. And then because there's an order book, there may be another offer behind that at 2.18, 2.16, 2.12. And our market makers will reclip. So they'll take the fill at 2.2. Their algorithm will look around the world in 100 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds. And then a millisecond later, they're back there with another 2,000 at 2.2. So our customers really like that. About 60% of our revenue comes from in-play trading, because customers love that. Oh my gosh, I bet $1,000 here at 3-to-1 odds, 4.0, 25%, and oh my, it went through immediately. And if they want more, there's more immediately there. So that's sort of like, yeah, that's our biggest advantage is the liquidity.
And besides you playing with against someone money, you are playing against some books that put the money there to increase their VIG or something like that. They can do it too, against syndicates too, and everything like that. It's not only, as you said, one person only, right? To take the money. Okay. We have some community myths here in Brazil. I guess all around the world we have it. How the SportTrade, you answered this a little, but we wanted to go a little deep in this. How the SportTrade ecosystem works, and what's the difference between market traders and market makers, and the obligation do market makers have with the exchange?
So market makers on our platform are licensed as providing a service to SportTrade, the sports betting operator. They get the same license that like Camby or SBF Tech gets. So it's a very significant license. It comes with background, disclosure, these sort of things. And that's true in most states. They are co-load somewhere. They have very sort of quick access to the matching engine, or the line feed, as we call it. And they have an obligation to make a two-sided market. This is very, very important. So Are there distinct advantages a market maker has over a market taker? Answer, absolutely. I will repeat that. Absolutely, they have advantages. However, they also have responsibilities that a traditional bettor most don't understand. And I think the hardest one to understand is the obligation a market maker has to price everything. So a market maker comes into our platform, they go through a licensing process that takes 6+ months. They go through an integration process through our stack that takes 3 to 6 months. Another year in, they have teams of employees, 10, 20, 30. They're burning, significant amount of capital and making a significant investment. They also come in and say, I want to do college basketball, NBA, NFL, let's say. Well, that doesn't mean they can just do the money line of NFL when they want to. It means that they're algorithmically plugging in, making two-way markets pre-game and in play. And in that, there's a ton of adverse selection because you may have one person in the ecosystem that knows everything there is to know about some college basketball league, and they're going to lose to that player. And so I think there definitely is a misconception and a myth around like, well, the market maker has a lot of advantages. And that's just simply true in every single marketplace. Like when you go on your broker today and buy 10 shares of whatever, like you're doing it from your computer and it's through a web UI, and then it's hitting some backend, and then it's going to the broker backend and doing an account balance check, and then it's being routed to some venue, whether that's a dark pool or an exchange, and then back to the backend, and then back to you, and that can be 300 or 400 milliseconds of time. And in that time, the market maker you're trading against could have entered hundreds of thousands of orders and canceled them all. Like you just sort of have to recognize that if you're not algorithmically there in the same room as the matching engine, you're going to have a speed disadvantage. And it's sort of like a trust with an operator that offers exchange wagering like a SportTrade has sort of created an ecosystem that is fair. And the way you create an ecosystem that's fair is you make those market makers like, quote, a two-sided market, and therein yield like a very large advantage back to bettors. So that's the obligation that market makers have. And market takers, customers, have no such obligations whatsoever. They can do whatever they want. They could sit there all day waiting for a mispricing and place a bet, and some do that. And they're free to do what they want. Yeah. So that's sort of the difference between a market maker and a market taker.
And sounds like the market makers put a lot of money on the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the difference between the amount of volume the market makers put in comparison by the market takers? It's a huge difference at the sports trader.
Yeah. So think of it this way. We will probably list in the range of 10 to 12,000 outcomes today. Our exchange just opened. It's 9:01. I'd imagine in the 10 to 12,000 total outcomes. So an outcome is Chiefs plus 2.5, Chiefs plus 3.5, plus 4.5, plus 5.5, plus 6.5, over 42.5, over 43. Each of those are outcomes, right? So in the Chief games alone, we now have player passing yards, player passing touchdowns, player receiving yards, player rushing yards, anytime touchdown score. There are team props, there are game props. There is a ton of outcomes. Okay, so 12,000 outcomes are listed on our venue. We will likely take in the range of 1,000 total trades in our ecosystem today. So we're still quite small. Okay, 1,000 trades, that's placed by trades come from orders placed by two people and orders matched, right? So in those 1,000 trades, you have 1,000 orders placed by market makers. You probably have 980 orders placed by users. And then you have another 20 of those orders placed by other users. So maybe you have 1,000 orders placed by users and there's some self-matching there. And then you have about 980 orders placed by market makers for those trades. Fine. But how many total orders did the market makers make? I would say that there's going to be over 2 million orders made today by market makers, right? Order, cancel, order, cancel. every time a line shifts, they're going to pull orders and place new ones, and they create a depth of book. So they might be offering 1.96 on both sides on something, and then 1.94, 1.94, 1.92, 1.92, 1.9, so on and so forth. So that creates a depth of liquidity. So that gives you an idea, right, of there's probably going to be 2 million orders placed through our system today. Of those 2 million orders, 99.9% of them, or maybe 99.99% of them, are placed by market makers. And of the ones that match, that you have a very small percentage of orders that are placed versus orders that are matched, right? Because market makers are sitting there pricing, Penn versus St. Joe's college basketball game. The game's in play. No one's really trading that game. Maybe we get 3 or 4 total trades, but even in that game alone, there may be 80 outcomes, and in those 80 outcomes, there might be, 4,000 orders placed times those 80 outcomes by market makers. So they are flooding the system with orders. And that's a true, again, like on a stock exchange, like the amount of orders that are going to be placed in the Brazilian stock exchange, I think is going to be close to 2 billion today. And 1.99 billion of those 2 billion are going to be placed by algorithmic market makers.
Understood. Just to clarify, so the market makers have to put money in a lot of different markets and different kind of thing, and not every marketing will be a match, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
With the market taker. So okay, that's clear. Good.
Here in Brazil, Alex, one of the strong points for an exchange is the live betting. Which advantage the bettor has compared to other books, especially in terms of spread and betting delay?
Yeah, I think you hit on the main two. When I started SportTrade, I like the goal for SportTrade, as crazy as it sounds, the customer we care about most is the recreational customer. We sort of recognize that the Sharp is going to use SportTrade and love SportTrade. But where we become a big business is bringing in customers that use SportTrade for reasons other than price. Because most recreationals don't care about price yet, at least, as crazy as that sounds. And so when I think about, like, take the United Kingdom market, for example, you have Betfair, Ace Markets, Matchbook, and all these other exchanges, but then you have a sports book. Okay, so if you were to go to a recreational player and say you should try Betfair versus Bet365, even for someone that wants to bet a straight bet, the sort of advantage you're going to give them is you're going to say, you have to learn this new UI, but you're going to get a better price. I think that's a really hard pitch for recreational players. And so what we try to do is say, okay, the UI can look very similar. There's like a simple UI in the settings you can set that actually the app comes, if you download, it's very simple to look at. Okay, so we've gotten rid of that sort of education barrier. But again, like, okay, the price is better. Oh, it's 1.98 versus 1.91. I'm sure you guys all have a handful of friends that just don't really care, right? They probably know the work that you're in. They know what you do for a living. And there they go, placing their 9-team accumulator on Bet365, or placing a straight bet at 1.91 when you tell them, hey, if you just shop around, you get 1.98. Okay, we admit as the Sharp community, we've lost that battle. So going back to the Betfair sort of Bet365 example, what if you could tell your friend that when they bet on Betfair, there's no delay? And that's the biggest thing, I think, for recreational players. When you place in-play bets on SportTrade, there's absolutely zero delay. And so we've had customers that by the time it would take DraftKings to accept your wager, we actually have had customers buy in, the price has changed, and they've sold out for profit. And that really is the magic of SportTrade. So when you get into a bet, there's like this what we call, customers call a money bar, and that money bar is the probability of your bet to win. So if you buy in at, let's say, 50%, that's 2.0 odds, then the bar is 50% full. If you're able to then sell out sometime later at 55%, then and the market moves to, like, whatever that is, 1.78 or 1.8, you're able to sell out at that new price, and that bar turns green and it fills up closer to that 100% mark, which is you've won your bet. or zero, you've lost your bet, and you can sell out right then and there. It's a cool way to visualize the value of your bet. And so those are the biggest advantages for in play is like, yes, the prices are way better. There's market makers competing, and the spreads are like at times like insane. The liquidity is, it's getting to a point where, like, for US sports, I think it's the most liquid venue in the world. At halftime, you can get $25,000 down on either side, pretty close to the touch, i.e. the top of the book. But I think the thing that's most exciting for recreational players that don't care about the liquidity, that don't care about the great prices, is it's instantaneous. So we have absolutely zero delay. You place a wager, it goes through our back end right to the matching engine and back. And by the time you're like lifting your thumb off the pane of glass, the order's already gone to the matching engine and back, and we're already rendering the animation of like your order's been filled. So yeah, it's a very, very fast experience. And that, I think, is the thing that recreationals will like more than price, is the speed.
Yeah, I guess the biggest problem the exchange has, because the bookies, the sports books, they can do something like 365 created a few years ago, the bet builder. It's for recreational players to incentivize to. He puts their 5 players to be booked, and more of ex-corners and somebody to score a goal and all those things to do a parlay, basically, right? And exchange, you can't do this kind of thing because you need someone to buy this position exactly all against you choose it here, right? It's impossible to create it on exchanges. I don't mean impossible in terms of I don't know, of programmation or EIs, but on money possibilities, really.
Yeah, I think the way to think about SportTrade is less of that we are an exchange and more that we are a technology company, and a technology company with a vision to fundamentally bring down the cost of a sports bet. And even again in like financial markets, there are like mechanisms called RFQ, request for quote, and I think there are going to be platforms, and SportTrade's not the only one. Smarkets actually does this. They have a same game parlay product, and this sort of the ethos is very similar, and that ethos is, well, we have market makers, and those market makers could theoretically price anything. So we can create a platform and a mechanism for customers to create a same game parlay. Yes, now the counterparty in every sort of scenario ends up being the market makers, as opposed to a transparent sort of exchange format, because of the combinatoric, difficulty of creating all of these listable, tradable outcomes. I think it's possible. And then I think the way to do it is, once someone has placed that 6-leg same game parlay, you now list that as a tradable thing once the customer has bet it. So you don't pre-list every combination, because you'll list 20 million combinations and only 8,000 will be used on a given day. You sort of wait for those 8,000 to be placed, and now you can create almost a marketplace where here are the other more liquid same game parlays that, as you're choosing your 6 legs, maybe we already have that one. But then, of course, if we don't, market makers are streaming a 2-way price to you. You then can now place that same game parlay. And then again, that thing we're always going for. We want to give your bets a fair liquid value. And now asking the market makers, we want you to price this custom 6-leg thing in play as different legs are hitting, and then still give that player a fair cash out shake. That's probably years away for us, but we would love to be able to offer someone, if someone's offering you a same game parlay at 10-1, it probably means the true price is around 22 or 23-1. We would love to offer it at 17-1, because that's a 70% odds boost, right, on 10-1 bet.
Yeah.
So it's going to take time. It's not something in the immediate future, but it's probably doable.
I got it. Understood. Nice.
And Alex, when you are talking about the live betting, that brings maybe a problem, because we have some how do I say that, some exchange in Europe and a lot of places around the world who have the problem with the court sitting groups, the persons who bet on the stadium and stuff like that. And what the things you do to blind the sports trader to against this kind of groups?
Yeah, you're talking about the court siding folks?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in the US, it's actually a lot harder. Like, we don't list a lot of like it's really kind of hard to get into like a US NBA stadium with any sort of infrastructure and try and beat like SportRadar. So SportRadar or BetGenius or another group will be in the stadium collecting the data. It's my preference that the leagues allow multiple sort of. I guess let me say this: I think the court siding should be legal. I think that I think that there should be multiple groups inside these stadiums that can 100% operate and not interrupt any play, not even be noticeable by anyone in the stadium or watching on TV. And I think there should be a very, very competitive market to give platforms, not just SportTrade, but every bookmaking platform, the ability to get data way faster. Because if you get data faster, you can price faster. And if you can price faster, you can have more uptime and less bet delays. In our system, we sort of built out something that sort of can identify a court sider in real time, and not to get too into the details because I admit it's somewhat complicated, but essentially what our matching engine does is when it senses a net order imbalance, so when it senses that there's way more buyers than sellers or way more sellers than buyers over a discrete interval, maybe that interval is 100 milliseconds, maybe it's a second. What it will do actually during the game, when this sort of feature is enabled, is it will stop matching for some period of time. It will actually stop the price time mechanism that is you guys are familiar with, right? Price time mechanism means first in, first out.
Yeah.
It will switch over to actually an auction. So we call this auction on demand. So it'll queue up the orders for a length of time equaling the amount of time it takes the SportRadar data to get to our market makers. And we queue up all the orders, and then at the deadline of the auction, we run a clearing mechanism and we price, like if there are any crosses between buyers and sellers, we create one clearing price. We publish that out to the tape or multicast. We take all the time in force of the remaining orders and either put them on the book, and then, like, let's say you wanted to bet at 1.97 and someone wanted to lay it at 1.96. Well, there's no trade there, but you're both wanting to be on the book, so now the book is going to have those two orders. Or maybe both of you have an immediate or canceled time in force, in which case at the end of the auction you guys didn't quite reach a match, and now those orders are canceled, and then the matching engine goes back to price time. So what our in-play can look like for some period of time is like price time for an hour at a time, and then auction for 3 seconds, back to price time, back to auction. And the beautiful thing about the auction is like, I recognize we're getting into like exchange 301 level stuff here, but if you are posting liquidity as a retail player and you're not at the game and you want to back this team at 2.0 and a goal is scored and the odds are going to go to 4.0 on a traditional exchange like Betfair, they sort of encourage you to cancel your order and not have it there, but you can override that. On SportTrade, your order basically will get swept up in this auction, and the market makers will both see this stale order that wants to back something at 2.0 when the true now is 4.0. And what they'll do by virtue of competition and by virtue of this auction is that it's not the first market maker to pick off that order. when a market maker picks off the order, an auction will start, and then both market makers are like, okay, this trade isn't going to go off at 2.0. So blindly, right? I'm over here. I'm a market maker. That market maker's over there. I'm like, okay. Well, now the game's a valuation game, because now it's okay. I think it's probably worth 4.0, so I'll give him 3.9. And then the second market maker's over there. They're like, I think it's worth 4.1, so I'll give him 4.0 using decimal odds. And then the auction ends. Of course, you have no idea this is happening. You're sitting on the phone watching, sitting on the couch watching the game with your phone next to you. You get a push notification on SportTrade. Your bet was filled at 4.0. Of course, the TV hasn't even shown the goal happening, right? But you have this level of fairness and protection, because when you have a limit order out there, when a market maker aggresses, it sort of pulls market makers into this like very competitive auction where neither one of them is going to let the other get away with a good trade. And so that competition forces that price down for you, or the odds up in your sort of parlance, and the bet goes off at 4.0. So there was some very, very cool technology behind what we built, and that probably is the coolest. And that's actually used in a lot of like stock exchanges. It's called a modified auction on demand. But I don't know how we originally got to this. I mean, I don't know, we were talking about technology or whatever, but we were talking about in play. Yes, what we do at courtsiders. So that's what we do. That's
so we can assume it's a battle against the exchange and the court-siding groups, right? Because you needed to always receive your live data first, more early. How do you see the future of sports trade? Will it ever be available to Latam community here in South America, Brazil, Argentina, and these countries?
Yeah, I know Brazil's really opening up sports wagering. I know someone pretty well that operates has an offering there in Brazil already. Now I would love to bring our offering there, or partner with someone that wants to utilize our technology to bring our offering there. Because it's better for players. I'm not an expert in this sort of regulatory. I know there's a process going on right now to determine, how many licenses should be offered and these sort of things. And I'm imagining Bet365 and some of those larger brands are either already there or will be there. And so it's probably not an immediate thing for us, but I think we do have aspirations to bring this technology and this sort of vision to beyond the U.S.
As well, here in Brazil, I guess the market is kind of large for the books and exchanges and everything like that. When they started the regulatory process here, more than 100 books filled the formulary to demonstrate interest in to be here in Brazil, So I think it's a big market for them too.
That's great.
And Alex, here in Brazil, and I think in a lot of places around the world, exchange have a real influence on our community. And what advice do you have for bettors and exchange traders, if we can put on this way? What do you say for this kind of people?
I think if you are a customer out there, if you want to be sharper and smarter than 99% of your friends, you don't have to know anything about sports. I'm sure there are odds comparison sites in Brazil. Get an odds comparison site subscription. Shop on every bet. Get the best price. And I think the easiest way to make money, soccer is probably an incredibly efficient market. I probably wouldn't start with soccer. I'd imagine start with something like NBA. NBA is probably a lot easier to get an edge in, and it's in the same time zone, right? Than something like soccer. And soccer is probably more popular, and it's probably what all your friends are betting. But if you get an odds screen and you sort of watch a live NBA game, you're gonna be able to find opportunities where 9 bookmakers have one price for something, and the 10th bookmaker has a different price. And there are very easy ways to sort of devig what is the true price of an outcome based on the 9 bookmakers. And if the 10th bookmaker offers a price that's better than the true midpoint price of the other 9, or even looking at the true midpoint price of someone like a Pinnacle, or if SportTrade is on an odds screen that you use, turn on SportTrade because it's a very sort of indicative price. A quick example would be if you divig a line on, the Charlotte Hornets money line to be exactly 3.0, and you can back it at 3.2 on a slower bookmaker, doesn't mean that 3.2 bet is going to win. It means that it's worth 3.0. So what's 1 divided by 3.2? 3.2, that's 31.25. And 3.0 is 33%. So it means you're buying something at 31.25% odds when it actually is at 33.3% odds of winning. Think about like stock trading. Like you just bought a share at 31.25 that's worth 33.33. That is going to, over time, end up in your favor. It's a very sort of fun way to do in-play betting is, because then it ends up giving you a sweat. Like I do that all the time. I'm sitting on unabated or odd sham, dark horse, spank odds, whatever, and I'm watching a game and I see that like everyone has got something priced at 38%. And here's a bookmaker that's offering at 35%. Meaning after I devig the books, the sharp books, the midpoint is 38% odds, and one book is offering 35%. And whatever it is, I buy, that at 35%, I put my bet down, and now I have a sweat. Now I'll tune into that game and watch. And again, it doesn't really matter to me whether the bet wins or loses. What matters to me is like, after I've bet it, does that price quickly move closer to 38%? And if it does, it means that bet in an in-place sense has closing line value in some discrete amount of time, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. That slower bookmaker admitted to me that I was right by moving their price closer to the global midpoint. It sounds complicated. Like it's actually incredibly easy. And once you sort of start betting like that, it's a like at worst you're going to break even over time. But like if you have the weightings correct and you look at the right bookmakers who have the truest price, like you're definitely going to win over time. And it's harder for a bookmaker to kick you out as quick because it's just harder to profile an in-play better versus a pregame better. So that would be my advice. Shop on price. If you want to sort of take it to the next level, devig the sharp books, find a midpoint, and bet on the bookmaker that has a price that disagrees with the midpoint.
And it returns to what you said before, to always look for the biggest odd you have in all market.
Yep, 100%.
And a lot of time, as you said,
they don't care.
They don't care about the price, but it's the first advice and the most easy to get the edge of the market,
Yeah, I think in Brazil, do they have things called odds boosts as promos? Do they do that?
Yeah.
Yes, 365 has it. Betano has it too. The Betfair has too. Betfair here in Brazil, I don't know if it's like that all around the world, but here they have the exchange and the sports book on Betfair, and they do a lot of promotions like a team to win. It's kind of 1.3 all around the market, and they do a promotion as 2.0.
Yep.
And to new customers to bring them.
So I think the way to get recreational players to care about prices is to actually quote the better price as an odds boost to the existing price. It's really interesting. Like even in the US, like people, this is plus 800 versus plus 600. I don't care. It's plus 600 with a 33% odds boost. And they're like, whoa, that's
totally different.
Wow. Because here's the thing, a recreational sports bettor thinks that winning or losing is up to them, and it's whether they're good at picking the winner. And so inherently they actually think that every bet they make is at true fair value. They think if they lose over time, it's because they're bad at sports betting, which is not true. They don't understand when they bet something at 3.0, the true price is 3.5. They think the true price is 3.0. So when Bet365 gives them a 30% odds boost and turns that 3.0 into a 4.0, they think that they're getting 33% in their pocket, if that makes sense. They think every bet they place is at true fair value. So if anyone offers a boost above that, they're going to be making money. That's income for them. So the way to sort of make price non-sensitive players price sensitive is to quote the Betfair price or the better price as an odds boost to the 365 price. So we're going to try stuff like that. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, that's wrong. You're obfuscating, you're tricking people. And I'm like, well, what's an odds boost? Like, it's the same thing. You're marketing to a player that it's a 50% odds boost when you know that even after the odds boost, it's like kind of just like a fair price. So try that with your friends next time. Like, they're all going to load up 365 and you've gotten a better price at 3.8 for something and they got 3.4, and just tell them like, hey, the book I'm using is doing a promo right now. It's at 15% odds boost if you sign up. They're gonna be like, oh yeah, I want to get my bet boosted at 15%. You know?
Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense.
Cool.
And Alex, we cover all the questions we have for you, but I want to ask you if you have any curiosity or something like that about the sports trader or about exchange, who you think it's nice to people know, because here in Brazil, we have a lot of people who are passionate about this kind of thing, So if I'm sure they will like a lot of this episode because they will understand a lot of different things. But if you have anything to add, I think that's the moment, and I think we'll be really good.
Yeah, I think it's great that Betfair like offers an exchange product in the UK, yeah, to me, like, it's such an interesting community because it's folks that are trying to win a game that's like kind of stacked against you, and I think, but if you look out there and you sort of are just thoughtful, you can find your edges. So hopefully there are more. Like what we really hope happens is like the sort of sportsbook versus exchange thing sort of over time there's no rift. It's just a sports betting experience. And that by having more competitive options, you'll see that your friends who are recreational start to get better prices on things, and that will probably make you feel better. And that's the goal of SportTrade. Like, we want there to be as many competitive options as possible to drive down the cost of a sports bet to like pretty close to zero. So that's my parting thought. And I really, appreciate you guys like having me on the show.
It was our pleasure.
Então, pessoal, a gente chegou aqui para o final de mais um episódio, nosso 11º. Foi uma conversa bem legal com o Alex. Espero que vocês tenham gostado, porque foi bem legal aí de ter essa conversa com ele. Ele trouxe uns pontos bem legais aí sobre as exchanges. Eu sei que todo mundo aí ama esse assunto. Então, espero que vocês tenham gostado. E se gostaram, deixa aqui o like, inscreva no nosso canal aqui, que a cada 15 dias nós temos um podcast novinho aí para vocês. É isso aí, né, Divinão?
É isso aí. Lembrando também que a parte mais importante e diferente disso aí é que ele é um cara que está dentro de uma exchange, e não só, como posso dizer, como se ele trabalhasse com uma exchange. Não, ele trabalha para a exchange. Então, o papo foi bem bacana, espero que vocês tenham gostado aí.
E é isso. E não se esqueçam, mais uma vez, BetBra, se vocês tiverem interesse, tá aqui o QR Code e o link aqui embaixo. Fechou? Vou chamar o Alex aqui para dar o tchauzinho para vocês e valeu, galera. So, Alex, thanks for accept our invite, and thanks again.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. I love what you guys are doing, and all the best.
So, thanks. Bye-bye, guys.
Thanks,